How Python web frameworks, WSGI and CGI fit together. I have a Bluehost account where I can run Python scripts for CGI. I guess it's the simplest CGI, because to run I have to define the following in .access. Now, whenever I look up web programming with Python, I hear a lot about WSGI and how most frameworks use it. But I just don't understand how it all fits together, especially when my web server is given Apache running at a host's machine, and not something I can really play with, except defining .access commands. How are WSGI, CGI, and the frameworks all connected? What do I need to know, install, and do if I want to run a web framework, say web.py or cherrypy, on my basic CGI configuration? How to install WSGI support?
How WSGI, CGI, and the frameworks are all connected? Apache listens on port 80. It gets an HTTP request. It parses the request to find a way to respond. Apache has a lot of choices for responding. One way to respond is to use CGI to run a script. Another way to respond is to simply serve a file. In the case of CGI, Apache prepares an environment and invokes the script through the CGI protocol. This is a standard Unix fork/exec situation. The CGI subprocess inherits an OS environment including the socket and stout. The CGI subprocess writes a response, which goes back to Apache. Apache sends this response to the browser. CGI is primitive and annoying. Mostly because it forks a subprocess for every request, and subprocess must exit or close stout and stare to signify end of response. WSGI is an interface that is based on the CGI design pattern. It is not necessarily CGI. It does not have to fork a subprocess for each request. It can be CGI, but it doesn't have to be. WSGI adds to the CGI design pattern in several important ways. It parses the HTTP request headers for you and adds these to the environment. It supplies any post-oriented input as a file-like object in the environment. It also provides you a function that will formulate the response, saving you from a lot of formatting details. What do I need to know, install, do if I want to run a web framework, say web.py or cherrypy, on my basic CGI configuration? Recall that forking a subprocess is expensive. There are two ways to work around this. Embedded mod_WSGI or mod_Python embeds Python inside Apache. No process is forked. Apache runs the Django application directly. Daemon mod_WSGI or mod_FastKey allows Apache to interact with a separate daemon, or long-running process, using the WSGI protocol. You start your long-running Django process, then you configure Apache's mod_FastKey to communicate with this process. Note that mod_WSGI can work in either mode, embedded or daemon. When you read up on mod_FastKey, you'll see that Django uses FLUP to create a WSGI-compatible interface from the information provided by mod_FastKey. The pipeline works like this. Django has several Django.core handlers for the various interfaces. For mod_FastKey, Django provides a manage.py runfg that integrates FLUP and the handler. For mod_WSGI, there's a core handler for this. How to install WSGI support? Follow these instructions. This URL. For background, see this. This URL.
I think Florian's answer answers the part of your question about what is WSGI, especially if you read the PEP. As for the questions you pose towards the end, WSGI, CGI, FastGI etc. are all protocols for a web server to run code and deliver the dynamic content that is produced. Compare this to static web serving, where a plain HTML file is basically delivered as is to the client. CGI, FastGI and SGI are language agnostic. You can write CGI scripts in Perl, Python, C, Bash, whatever. CGI defines which executable will be called, based on the URL, and how it will be called, the arguments and environment. It also defines how the return value should be passed back to the web server once your executable is finished. The variations are basically optimizations to be able to handle more requests, reduce latency and so on. The basic concept is the same. WSGI is Python only. Rather than a language-agnostic protocol, a standard function signature is defined. That is a complete, if limited, WSGI application. A web server with WSGI support, such as Apache with mod_WSGI, can invoke this function whenever a request arrives. The reason this is so great is that we can avoid the messy step of converting from http:/post CGI to Python, and back again on the way out. It's a much more direct, clean and efficient linkage. It also makes it much easier to have long-running frameworks running behind web servers, if all that needs to be done for a request is a function call. With plain CGI, you'd have to start your whole framework up for each individual request. To have WSGI support, you'll need to have installed a WSGI module, like mod_WSGI, or use a web server with WSGI baked in, like CherryGI. If neither of those are possible, you could use the CGI WSGI bridge given in the PEP.
You can run WSGI over CGI as PEP 333 demonstrates as an example. However, every time there is a request, a new Python interpreter is started in the whole context, database connections, etc. needs to be built, which all take time. The best if you want to run WSGI would be if your host would install mod_WSGI and made an appropriate configuration to defer control to an application of yours. FLUP is another way to run with WSGI for any web server that can speak FCD, SGI or AJP. From my experience, only FCD really works, and it can be used in Apache either via mod_FastGI or if you can run a separate Python daemon with mod_proxy_SCD. WSGI is a protocol much like CGI, which defines a set of rules how web server and Python code can interact. It is defined as PEP 333. It makes it possible that many different web servers can use many different frameworks and applications using the same application protocol. This is very beneficial and makes it so useful.
If you are unclear on all the terms in this space, and let's face it, it's a confusing acronym-laden one, there's also a good background reader in the form of an official Python how-to which discusses CGI versus FastGI versus WSGI and so on. This URL.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribe link.